More than 12,000 flights have been canceled across the Middle East due to disruptions caused by the war between the U.S., Israel, and Iran. Here to talk more about the impact on the aviation sector is John Gradek, lecturer and coordinator of aviation management at McGill University. John, thanks as always for joining us.
My pleasure.
This is not just the Middle East, is it? This is going to affect airlines around the world now and probably for a little while to come, too, won't it?
Yeah, it's disruption started on Saturday, and we've had close to 12,000 cancellations. We've had many multiples of that in terms of delays. Airspace is intermittent. Airspace is closed for some of these countries. Airspace is limited in some of these other countries. This area of the world has evolved over the last decade as what I would call a mega hub for aviation globally. The carriers operating into Doha, into Abu Dhabi, and Dubai have really built this infrastructure and this fleet, basically move as much traffic as they possibly can through those hubs from around the world. So they move somewhere in the range of about 500,000 passengers a day through those three hubs. So this is a very, very significant impact on global aviation.
And then I guess the value of do we know what the value of the freight that goes through that region?
I think that in terms of tonnage, it's difficult to ascertain because that's not in the public domain. But you would say that they have freighters, they have hundreds of freighters that transit through those three airports. They've built up cargo infrastructures to handle connections and transit freight. So there's tens of millions of dollars a day going through those airports.
I mean, I guess first question, with everything that's gone, 12,000 flights canceled, these people obviously are trapped there. How are they, is there any way to get them to where they were supposed to go? I mean, mostly I imagine to get home for a lot of them, but are they moving on the ground or are they just sitting still right now?
Well, remember what these carriers have been doing. When you fly on Qatar, if you fly on Emirates or Etihad, they basically fly long haul into those three cities and long haul out. So the people that are stranded are not necessarily in Doha or Abu Dhabi or in Dubai. They're stranded. I had calls this morning from Kenya, calls from Sri Lanka, calls from Singapore saying my flights have been canceled through Doha or through Abu Dhabi. What do I do? And so this is like I said, it's a global issue. It is not just concentrated on traffic to or from these Gulf areas. It's really a lot of global traffic going through it. So if you're flying from Toronto to Hyderabad or into New Delhi, the odds are you're going to be flying through the Middle East. So those flights are canceled or reduced significantly. So it is affecting global traffic, especially those connecting passengers.
And I imagine, I mean, for the flights from elsewhere that aren't even going into that region but are going around it, they are now flying, can they fly around this massive region that's essentially a no-go zone?
Yeah, it is. And that's airplanes can go anywhere that they get authorized to go. The question is getting authorization to fly around it. So they've got, there's a lot of airspace in that area of the world that is currently restricted. You have Russia, of course. You have the Ukraine. Now have the Middle East. 12 countries have got airspace restrictions. So there's you got a very narrow corridor for moving a lot of these airplanes. So those, if you look at flight tracking software that talks about the congestion, those corridors are heavily congested, and you need authority from the air traffic control operation and from the country that you're flying over. And there's a backlog, and that's why you have delays. So it is a very congested, run around this war zone.
And I imagine from a mechanical point of view, too, the longer these planes are on the ground, they don't like sitting, do they? And it's very expensive to keep them sitting.
Yeah, I think that, you've got about 35 airplanes from the Middle East carriers that are currently stuck in North America. So these airplanes have been stuck now for at least a day, if not 3 days. So those airplanes will need some tender loving care to get them back in the air. Crews are not, the crews are not readily available. So while you have a lot of airplanes, that are on the ground in the Emirates or in Qatar, there's a lot of airplanes that are stuck that have no crew, no mechanical support until you decide to basically bring them back into service.
And
there is going to be a significant amount of work required.
I can imagine. Now, how long can this go before this? I mean, this is already a big problem, but how long would it take to try and get back to normal? Say this lasts another month, which is possibly what's been hinted at. How long might it take after that to get everything flowing back to normal, if it's even possible?
Well, it's possible. I think it is possible. The question is going to be one of looking at the extent of disruption and how the airlines basically decide to bring everything back into play. Usually, this is like a snowstorm, 72 hours to get everything back to play and be sure the crews and the airplanes are where they're supposed to be. So restarting it is not going to be an issue. This one, because the airplanes are stuck around the world, it'll probably take a week or so once we've given the all clear that it is safe to operate through that territory. So a week to get everything back into play. The problem is going to be how long does this last and what's the impact going to be on the price of oil and price of fuel. As a previous guest mentioned, this hopefully is a short-term blip, 10, 15 days. If it goes on beyond that and we now go into significant increases in the price of oil, this could put a couple of carriers in deep trouble financially. Those carriers that are marginal at this point in time, that have cash flow issues, that have some traffic issues, those are the ones we have to keep an eye on to make sure that there is a risk associated with those carriers that are the marginal carriers.
Okay, John, we have to wrap it up there, but thank you as always for joining us.
My pleasure. Have a great day. Take care.
Cheers, John. You too. John Gradek, lecturer and coordinator of aviation management at McGill University.